When my daughter said, "Mom, we need to talk," I didn't think it would be the kind of talk that would destroy my family. She was standing in the doorway of our kitchen, sunlight slanting across her face, the same way it used to fall across mine when I was her age. There was something tight about her expression, though. Something that didn't belong to a child talking to her mother. I remember I was rinsing coffee cups when she said it. My hands were wet, soap suds floating in the sink. I didn't turn around right away. "About what, baby?" I asked, trying to sound casual. There was silence behind me too long. When I finally turned, she was holding a small, faded envelope. One I hadn't seen in years. That's when my heart stopped. It was the same ivory envelope I thought I had buried deep inside a shoebox in the back of my closet, wrapped in old scarves no one ever touched. The envelope that held 3 letters and 1 photograph. She didn't have to say anything. I knew what she'd found. She just looked at me and whispered, "Who's Michael?" And in that moment, everything, the smell of coffee, the morning light, even the steady hum of the refrigerator, felt like it froze around me. Before that morning, my life had been ordinary, peaceful even. I'd built my calm carefully over the years, like a garden that finally bloomed after seasons of tending. I was 48, a school administrator, married for 25 years to Daniel, my high school sweetheart, the kind of man everyone called reliable. We lived in a quiet house on a quiet street, where the evenings smelled of cut grass and jasmine. Our daughter, Lily, had just turned 21. She was in college, studying journalism, full of energy and curiosity. The kind of girl who wanted to know everything about everything, and sometimes that scared me. Because there were things I didn't want her to know. My marriage wasn't unhappy. But it wasn't alive either. For years, Daniel and I had lived more like polite roommates than lovers. We shared meals, schedules, even laughter sometimes, but never secrets, never vulnerability. The affair, my mistake, had happened 12 years ago. His name was Michael. He was a contractor who'd worked on a school expansion project. He was quiet, funny, attentive in a way that felt dangerous. I told myself I just liked his company, that it was harmless. But the heart is a liar when it's lonely. It started with coffee breaks and ended with nights I told Daniel I was working late. It lasted 6 months. Then it ended abruptly. Michael moved to another city, and I convinced myself I could start over. I buried everything. Literally. I took the letters he wrote, the photo we took one spring afternoon, sunlight on our faces, his arm around me, and hid them away. I promised myself I'd never look at them again. For 12 years, I didn't. Until Lily found them. That morning, she sat at the kitchen table, the envelope between us like a loaded weapon. "Where did you find that?" I asked quietly. "In your closet," she said. "I was looking for that scarf you wore to Aunt May's wedding. I thought you wouldn't mind." She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed, confused. "Is he someone you worked with?" Her voice was gentle, but it cut through me. I could have lied. God knows I wanted to. But something in her eyes stopped me, the same something I'd seen in my own reflection years ago, when I decided to end the affair. "I made a mistake, Lily," I said finally. My voice broke around the words. "It was a long time ago. Before you were old enough to even remember. And it ended." She didn't blink. "Does Dad know?" "No," I said. "And he doesn't need to." That was the moment I made my second mistake. Because what I didn't know then was that Lily believed honesty was love. She believed truth, no matter how painful, was better than silence. And she was her mother's daughter, stubborn, idealistic, and far too brave. That evening, when Daniel came home, I knew something was wrong before I even saw his face. The way the front door closed, slow, deliberate. The way the hallway light caught his shoulders, tense beneath his jacket. He walked into the living room, holding the same envelope. "Do you want to tell me who Michael is?" he asked. My breath caught. I turned toward Lily, who stood behind him, tears streaking her cheeks. "Dad, I didn't mean," she started, but he raised his hand. "Not now," he said, his voice low. He looked at me again. 12 years, Nora. 12 years you kept this from me. I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. He dropped the envelope on the coffee table, the contents spilling letters, the photograph, yellowed with time. I stared at them like they were ghosts. It was over before it began, I whispered. Daniel, I swear to you. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Over before it began? You kept the letters. I kept them to remind myself what I lost, I said, tears spilling now. Not what I had. But he wasn't listening. He stood there, shaking his head, the kind of pain on his face I'd never seen before. Lily was sobbing quietly. The house that had always been my sanctuary suddenly felt small, suffocating. That night, Daniel slept in the guest room. I sat awake in the dark, the clock ticking loud enough to fill the silence. And I thought, this is what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. By morning, the house was still quiet, but something in it had changed. Lily didn't come down for breakfast. Daniel left before I could speak to him. When I finally stepped into her room, she was sitting by the window, knees pulled to her chest. I'm sorry, she whispered before I said anything. I thought he had a right to know. I nodded, though my heart felt like it was breaking in slow motion. You did what you thought was right, I said softly. But sometimes, right doesn't fix things. It just breaks them differently. She looked at me then, tears in her eyes. Do you still love him? I thought about it, about the man who'd shared my youth, my fears, my whole adult life. Yes, I said. But love doesn't erase mistakes. It just makes us wish we hadn't made them. Outside, the morning light was harsh, unforgiving. I knew my life was about to unravel piece by piece. But I also knew I couldn't hide anymore. Because the truth, once spoken, doesn't go back to sleep. The days after the truth came out felt like walking through thick fog. Everything familiar was still there, but I couldn't touch it anymore. Daniel moved into the guest room permanently. His toothbrush disappeared from our bathroom. He no longer asked if I'd eaten or if I needed anything from the store. The silence between us grew so heavy that even the sound of his footsteps upstairs felt like thunder. At work, I kept my smile painted on, the way women do when they're falling apart but still have meetings to run and papers to file. But at home, every evening I faced that quiet wall of his absence. Lily tried to fill the space between us. She would linger in the kitchen, talking too much about school, about her friends, about trivial things. I knew she was trying to patch a wound she couldn't see. One night, I found her sitting in the living room, scrolling through old family photos on her phone, birthdays, vacations, Daniel laughing with cake on his nose. I messed everything up, she said quietly. I sat beside her. No, sweetheart. You didn't break this. It was already cracked. You just turned on the light. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, he doesn't look at you the same way anymore. I swallowed hard. No, I said. He doesn't. 2 weeks passed before Daniel spoke to me directly. It was a Thursday night. Rain tapped against the kitchen windows, soft but steady. He came in from work late, dropped his keys on the counter, and finally met my eyes. I talked to a lawyer, he said simply. The words landed like a stone in my chest. I'm not filing yet, he continued. But I needed to know my options. I wanted to ask what options, but I already knew. Divorce. Separation. Division of everything we'd built. Daniel, I whispered, please don't let this be the end. He sighed and rubbed his face with his hands. You lied to me for 12 years, Nora. Every morning, every dinner, every family photo, you lied. I don't even know who I've been living with. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. You know me. You've always known me. I made a terrible mistake, yes. But I never stopped being your wife. He looked up, his eyes glassy with anger and something softer beneath. Then why did you keep the proof? That question haunted me. Why had I? The letters were yellowed, the photo fading, but maybe I'd kept them because part of me needed to remember I was once wanted, once seen. I couldn't tell him that. Not without hurting him more. So I said nothing. He turned away. You should have told me, Nora. Maybe we could have fixed it back then. And then, quieter, but now? I don't even know if there's anything left to fix. That night, I sat in bed, the sound of rain against the roof blurring with my own heartbeat. I thought about Michael, how easily I'd let him slip into the spaces Daniel used to fill. How sweet his laughter was, how it made me feel young again. But also how, when he left, I'd chosen my family over fantasy. I thought I'd done the right thing. But the right thing, when built on lies, is still fragile. Around midnight, Lily knocked softly on my door. "Can I sleep here tonight?" she asked. Her voice was small, like when she was little and afraid of thunderstorms. "Of course," I said. She climbed into bed, curling up beside me like she used to. After a long silence, she said, "He's not talking to me either." "Your father?" She nodded. "He's angry that I told him. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now he won't even look at me. I wanted to protect him, not hurt him." I brushed her hair back gently. "Sometimes the truth doesn't protect, Lily. Sometimes it just exposes what we weren't ready to face." Tears welled in her eyes. "Are you two going to split up?" I hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know." And for the first time in my life, I realized I couldn't control how this story would end. The next morning, Daniel didn't come home from work. He sent a text short, cold. "Staying at Tom's tonight. Need space." He stayed there for 3 nights. I went through the motions, work, dinner, dishes, but every time I passed his empty chair, I felt the ache of what I'd risked. On Sunday, I decided to drive to his friend Tom's house. I needed to see him, to speak before the silence became permanent. When I pulled up, Daniel was sitting on the porch, a coffee cup in his hands. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Nora," he said quietly, setting the cup down. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to come," I said. "You can't keep punishing me by disappearing." He looked exhausted, not just from anger, but from heartbreak. "I'm not trying to punish you," he said. "I just can't breathe around you right now. Every time I look at you, I see him. I see everything you hid." I took a slow step closer. "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to make it right." He shook his head. "You can't make it right, Nora. You can only be honest about who you are finally. I need time to decide if that's someone I can live with." The words hit hard because they were fair. "I'll wait," I said softly. "For as long as it takes." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once, a small gesture, but enough to give me hope. That night, when I got home, Lily was waiting in the living room. "Did you see him?" she asked. I nodded. "He needs space." She looked down, twisting her bracelet. "Mom." I found his Facebook page open earlier. He's been messaging someone named Claire. My chest tightened. "Claire?" "She's from his office. I think they've been talking a lot lately." For a second, the room spun. After all that had happened, the idea of Daniel turning to someone else was a fresh cut. I took a deep breath. "He's hurt, Lily. People do strange things when they're hurting." Her voice trembled. "But if he's doing the same thing you did?" I closed my eyes. "Then maybe it's karma. Or maybe it's the consequence I deserve." That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything, every small decision, every moment of weakness. The way one secret had poisoned years of peace. But even through the pain, one thought kept circling in my mind. If the truth destroyed us, maybe it could also rebuild us, piece by fragile piece. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending. The next morning, I decided to face it all, no more hiding, no more running from the truth or from Daniel. It was time to finally tell him everything. The next morning felt heavy, like the air itself was warning me that the day would change everything. I woke before sunrise, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint chirping outside. I brewed coffee, but even the smell couldn't cut through the nausea twisting in my stomach. Today, I was going to tell Daniel everything. Not just the version I'd given him, the short, sanitized confession, but the whole truth. The nights. The letters. The lies I'd told to keep the illusion alive. I had spent too long carrying this story like a wound wrapped in silk. Now it was time to open it. Lily came down the stairs just as I was grabbing my coat. Her hair was a mess, her eyes still puffy from sleep. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To see your father." Her face fell. "Mom, he's angry. Maybe you should wait." I shook my head. "No, baby. If I wait, this wound will rot. I have to do it now." She hesitated, then whispered, "Just don't let him destroy you." I smiled weakly. I already did that to myself. The drive to Tom's house was quiet, the morning fog curling around the road like ghosts. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Every mile felt like a confession. When I arrived, Daniel was outside, loading something into his car. He looked up, startled. "Nora," he said, "you can't just keep showing up like this." "I know," I said, voice shaking. "But I can't keep leaving things unsaid." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "What more is there to say? You cheated, you lied, you hid it for 12 years. That's the whole story." "No," I whispered. "That's only half." He froze. "Half? Can we talk? Please. Just hear me once. Then if you never want to see me again, I'll disappear." After a long pause, he nodded. "Fine. 10 minutes." We sat on the porch steps, the morning sun filtering through the trees. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. "When I met Michael, I was lonely, Daniel. Not unloved, but unseen. You were working late, traveling, and I was home with a baby who cried through the nights. I was drowning in laundry and lullabies and bills. And he noticed me." Daniel didn't move. He just stared at the distance. He told me I looked tired but beautiful, that I deserved to rest, to laugh. And for a while, I believed him. I took a deep breath. It wasn't an affair in the beginning. It was coffee after work, small talk that turned into confessions. Then one night, it became something else. And after, I hated myself. I told him I couldn't see him again. Daniel's voice was low, tight. "But you kept the letters." "Yes," I said, tears in my eyes. Because part of me missed who I was with him, not the cheating, but the feeling of being alive. I kept them hidden because they reminded me of a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. He finally turned to me, his eyes sharp. "So you're saying you cheated because I didn't pay you enough attention?" "No," I said quickly. "I cheated because I was weak. Because I was lost and stupid and selfish. But you didn't deserve that. And I've been trying to make up for it every day since." He laughed bitterly. "By lying to me for 12 years? "Yes," I said quietly. "Because I thought protecting you from the truth was love. I see now it was fear." He stood up, pacing. "Do you know what it's like to look at someone and realize you never really knew them?" I keep replaying every memory, every kiss, every promise, wondering which ones were real. "All of them," I whispered. "Every one." He stopped, his back to me. "Then why does it feel like I'm grieving someone who's still alive?" That broke me. I stood, my hands trembling. "Because you are. The woman you thought I was, she's gone. And I hate her too." He turned then, eyes glistening with anger and heartbreak. "I can't do this, Nora. I can't forgive you." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I said softly. "I'm asking for truth, yours, mine, whatever's left between them." He looked away. "You said everything you needed to. You should go." I nodded slowly. "Okay." But before I could step off the porch, he said something that stopped me cold. "Her name's Claire." I froze. "What?" "The woman I've been talking to. You know already, don't you?" I swallowed hard. "Lily saw the messages." He nodded. "It's nothing physical. But I think I understand now why you did what you did. She listens. She doesn't look at me like I'm broken." I wanted to be angry, to scream, to accuse. But all I felt was a strange, hollow calm. "I guess now we're even," I said quietly. He shook his head. "There's no even in betrayal, Nora. Just pieces that don't fit anymore." He picked up his car keys. "I'm going to my sister's for a while. Don't call me." And then he was gone. I drove home numb, the world outside the windshield blurring like watercolor. Lily was waiting at the door, her face pale. "What happened?" she asked. "He's leaving," I said simply. Her lips trembled. "For good?" "I don't know." She hugged me then, so tightly that it hurt. I'm sorry, Mom. I held her close, whispering, none of this is your fault. You just told the truth. But deep down, I knew we were both paying the price for it. That night, I sat in Daniel's empty chair and opened my old box of letters. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I took each one out to the backyard fire pit and burned them. The flames licked the air, turning paper to ash, my secret, my shame, my silence. When the last letter turned black, I whispered into the smoke, I'm sorry, not just to Daniel, but to the woman I used to be, to the one who thought love meant never being found out. The next morning, a text arrived. It was from Daniel. We need to talk. I'm coming by tonight. My stomach flipped. I didn't know what that meant, reconciliation or final goodbye. When he arrived, he looked tired but calmer. He stood in the doorway, not crossing the threshold. I saw the smoke last night, he said. You burned them? Yes, I said. All of it. I don't want any ghosts between us anymore. He nodded slowly. Good. We stood in silence for a long moment. Then he said, I'm not ready to forgive you, Nora. But I'm also not ready to let go completely. Tears blurred my vision. What does that mean? It means I'm moving back in as Lily's father, not your husband. Not yet. I need time to see if there's anything left worth saving. I nodded. I'll take that. He sighed. One condition. No more secrets. I promise, I said. And for the first time, it felt real. The beginning of something new, raw, uncertain, but honest. That night, as he unpacked his bag in the guest room, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt different, not healed, not whole, but real. I whispered to myself, maybe this is what redemption looks like, not forgiveness, but truth finally taking its place. And in the quiet of that moment, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the person we need to forgive most is the one staring back in the mirror. The days that followed were quiet, not peaceful, but muted, like the air after a storm when you're still waiting to see what survived. Daniel moved back into the house 2 weeks after that talk. He brought only a few things, his clothes, his work laptop, and a single framed photo of us from years ago, the one where I was laughing with my head thrown back, sunlight in my hair. He didn't hang it anywhere. Just set it face down on the dresser in the guest room. That told me everything about where we stood. We ate dinners at the same table, but in silence. We spoke through Lily, tell your mother I'm working late, or ask your father if he wants more rice. It would have been easier if he'd shouted or blamed or slammed a door. But Daniel's silence was a different kind of punishment, cold, patient, steady. And I accepted it, because I deserved it. One night, after Lily went to bed, I found him in the kitchen washing dishes. The radio was on low, a jazz station, the same one he used to play on Sunday mornings before everything fell apart. Can we talk? I asked softly. He didn't look up. About what? Us. He rinsed a glass, set it upside down to dry, and leaned against the counter. I don't know if there is an us anymore, Nora. My throat tightened. Then what are we doing? He sighed. Trying to be good parents. Trying to be civil. Trying not to destroy what's left. I stepped closer. I know I can't erase what I did, but I need you to know I've changed. I'm not that woman anymore. Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were tired, not angry, just worn out. Change takes time, he said. And forgiveness takes even longer. I can wait, I whispered. He gave a small, sad smile. I know you can. Months passed. Slowly, something like normalcy returned. We started talking again. Small things at first. Groceries, bills, Lily's school projects. Then about the weather, the news, old friends. It wasn't love, but it was something close to peak. And through it all, Lily watched us with a mix of hope and guilt that broke my heart. One evening, I found her sitting on the porch steps, scrolling through her phone. The sunset painted her face gold. Sweetheart, I said, sitting beside her, I can see it's weighing on you. What happened between your father and me, that's on us. Not you. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to ruin things. I thought I was doing the right thing. You did, I said gently. The truth hurts, but lies destroy. You just told the truth. She nodded, wiping her face. Do you still love him? I looked out toward the fading sky. Yes. In a way that's quieter now. Less about wanting him, more about wanting his peace. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think he still loves you? I smiled faintly. If he didn't, he wouldn't still be here. That night, I found Daniel in the garage fixing a broken chair. The same one he'd threatened to throw out years ago, after a fight about money. I leaned against the doorway. You always did hate that chair. He chuckled softly. Yeah, but Lily likes it. Says it feels like home. I hesitated, then said, maybe that's what we're doing, fixing something that'll never be perfect again, but still worth sitting on. He looked up at me, really looked, for the first time in months. Maybe. And in that one word, there was more hope than I'd felt in a year. A few weeks later, Daniel came home early one evening with takeout. Chinese, my favorite. He set it on the table and said, almost awkwardly, I thought we could eat together. I blinked. All three of us? Yeah, he said. Family dinner. Like old times. We sat together, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we laughed. Lily told us stories from school. Daniel teased her about her new crush, and I found myself smiling without guilt. But as I watched them, a strange ache formed in my chest, the kind of ache that comes when you realize happiness is fragile. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Daniel came into the living room. I talked to Claire, he said. I froze. Oh. He nodded. Told her it was over. That it never should have started. She was kind about it. Said she hoped I'd find peace with you. My eyes filled with tears. Why did you tell me this? Because you asked for no more secrets, he said simply. I let out a shaky breath. Thank you. He sat down across from me. Nora, I don't know if I can ever love you the same way again. But I don't hate you anymore. I nodded. That's enough for me. He tilted his head, studying me. You really burned everything? The letters, the box. Yes. Every last piece. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, good. Because I think we should start writing new ones. I frowned. New ones. He smiled faintly. Letters. Not to each other. To ourselves. Maybe we need to forgive who we were back then before we can love who we are now. Something about that idea, so simple, so painfully wise, made my chest ache. That's beautiful, I whispered. He nodded. Let's try. So we did. Every Sunday morning, we sat in silence at the kitchen table, writing letters to ourselves. Some were short, some pages long. We didn't read them aloud. Didn't share what they said. But the act of writing, of acknowledging, forgiving, releasing, began to change something between us. The distance softened. The air grew lighter. And little by little, laughter began to live in our house again. One morning, about 6 months later, Daniel left a note beside my coffee cup. It said, Dear Nora, I don't know where we're going, but I know I want to walk there beside you. D. My hands trembled as I read it. Not because it promised everything, but because it promised something real. I didn't need grand gestures anymore. I just needed truth. That evening, we took a walk, just the two of us. The sky was streaked with orange and violet, the air warm with the scent of rain-soaked earth. He reached for my hand, hesitated, then held it. It wasn't the same as before, not the easy comfort of old love, but the tentative grace of two people rebuilding from rubble. And maybe that's what love really is, not perfection, but persistence. When we got home, Lily was waiting on the porch. She grinned at us. You two look cute. Daniel laughed softly. Don't start rumors, kid. She winked. Too late. I already told Grandma. We all laughed then, the kind of laugh that feels like a door opening after years of being locked. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered a quiet prayer. Thank you for giving me another chance to be honest. To be seen. To be forgiven, even if only halfway. And in the darkness, I finally felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not the kind that forgets the past, but the kind that learns to live with it. But peace, I've learned, doesn't mean the story is over. Because the next morning, while sorting through Daniel's old papers in the study, I found an envelope tucked between files, one addressed to me. In his handwriting, with a date from 5 years ago. Before any of this began, the envelope trembled in my hand. It was yellowed around the edges, the ink slightly faded, as if time had been holding its breath with it. For a moment, I just stared at it. My name, Nora, written in Daniel's old, careful handwriting. The date in the corner read June 3rd, 5 years ago. 5 years. That was before my affair. Before Lily's discovery. Before our world split in two. My heart thudded against my ribs. Why had he written me a letter back then? And why had he hidden it? I should have walked away. Should have left it sealed, a ghost from a time I could never return to. But curiosity, that cruel old thing, whispered louder. So, I sat down on the floor of the study, cross-legged like a child, and tore the flap open. Nora, if you're reading this, it probably means I never found the right way to say what I should have said a long time ago. I've been keeping something from you, not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of changing everything we built. There was someone before you. Someone I thought I'd forgotten. But when Lily was born, I saw her eyes, and I remembered everything. Her name was Claire. And she was the woman I left behind when I met you. She didn't know I'd met someone else. She didn't know I was already building a new life. And when she found out, she was broken. She called once, said she might be pregnant. I never heard from her again. I told myself it was a lie. But sometimes, I wonder if I have another child out there. I've never told you because I didn't want to ruin what we had. But lately, guilt eats at me. Maybe one day, I'll find the courage to tell you the truth in person. But for now, I just need to say, you're my home, Nora. My peace. My choice. Daniel. I sat frozen, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. Claire. That name, Claire, the same woman he had just told me he ended things with. The same woman I thought was just a coworker. But she wasn't new in his life. She was from before me. And suddenly, everything, every quiet tension, every flicker of familiarity when he spoke her name, made a terrible kind of sense. He hadn't just betrayed me after my affair. He had been carrying his own secret long before I ever strayed. I pressed the letter against my chest and sobbed. Not from anger, not this time, but from something deeper, almost sacred. For years, I had thought I was the only sinner in our story. The only one who broke the vows, the trust, the sanctity of us. But now I saw the truth. We were both flawed. Both human. Both guilty of hiding the parts of ourselves we were too ashamed to reveal. It wasn't just my betrayal that cracked our marriage. It was the foundation, the quiet lies, the untold fears, the half-truths we both buried under "I'm fine." That evening, Daniel came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, the letter laid out between us. He stopped in the doorway, his face drained of color. "Where did you find that?" "In the study," I said quietly. "Between your old files." He exhaled, his shoulders sinking. "I forgot it even existed." "Did you mean what you wrote?" He nodded, shame flickering across his face. Every word. I swallowed hard. "So Claire wasn't just someone you met recently." "No," he said, voice rough. "She was, before. Years before. We were young, and I left her for you. I thought it was over. Then, last year, when she joined the firm, it felt like the past coming back to test me. And you failed." He didn't deny it. "Yes, I did." Silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating, but honest. Finally, I said, "All this time, I thought I was the only one who brought shame into this marriage." His eyes filled with tears. "No, Nora. You just brought yours into the light first." We sat there for a long time, two people who had loved, hurt, and failed each other in almost equal measure. "I don't even know what to feel," I whispered. "Maybe you don't have to yet," he said gently. "Maybe we just sit with it. No more hiding." And so we did. We sat there, side by side, in the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock, letting the truth breathe. The next morning, I made tea the way Daniel liked it, with too much sugar and not enough patience. When I brought it to him, he looked up, surprised. I read your letter again last night, I said. And I realized something. We've both been living in a kind of half-truth for years. You hid your guilt in silence. I hid mine in someone else's arms. But maybe this, right here, is what real love looks like. Not perfection, but confession. He nodded slowly, emotion thick in his throat. I think you're right. Do you still love me? I asked. He took a deep breath. Yes, but love isn't the same as before. It's wiser now. Tired, but true. That was enough for me. Weeks passed. We didn't talk much about the letter again, but something shifted subtly, quietly. The air between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was clear. Sometimes, Daniel would catch my eye across the room, and instead of guilt or sadness, there was something softer there. Recognition. Of who we'd been, who we were, and who we might still become. One Sunday morning, Lily joined us at the kitchen table while we wrote our letters to self. She smiled shyly and said, "Can I write one too?" Daniel and I exchanged a glance, then nodded. She wrote furiously, her brow furrowed. When she finished, she folded the paper and slid it between ours. "Can I read it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. Maybe someday." And that was fine. Because maybe some letters aren't meant to be read, only written, only released. Months later, Daniel and I renewed our vows quietly in the backyard. No guests. No white dress. Just the three of us under the old oak tree, with the wind carrying the scent of lavender and cut grass. He said, this time, no promises of perfection. Only promises of truth. And I said, no more burying the past. We'll live with it, together. We sealed it not with a kiss, but with a long, steady gaze that said everything words couldn't. Sometimes, I still think about the woman I was all those years ago, lonely, reckless, desperate to feel alive. And I forgive her. Because she was hurting. Because she didn't know how to speak her pain out loud. And I think about Daniel, the man who wrote that letter he never sent, scared, guilty, but still trying to protect the woman he loved. And I forgive him too. Because maybe that's the lesson of all this. We are not defined by the mistakes we make, but by what we do after them. Now, every Sunday, when the sun rises over our little house and the world is quiet, I sit at that same kitchen table with my tea and my pen. And I write, not to bury secrets anymore, but to unearth truth. To remind myself that even broken love can bloom again if watered with honesty. Because yes, I buried my affair years ago. But when my daughter found the evidence and told my husband, she didn't destroy my life. She saved it.